How would I do that?
Good to go?
Okay.
Awesome. All right, so I'm Rafael, this is Darnell, and Stephanie, and today we will be presenting on international development projects in Nicaragua. So to begin, our project is a little unorthodox in that we're not studying just one area or issue in Nicaragua and proposing some type of solution. In contrast, we're taking 3 different development projects that we found, that we've researched, and basically just analyzing their successes, their failures, in order just to create awareness of what's going on in Nicaragua. So, so we have analyzed some of their benefits and some challenges and negative consequences associated with these 3 projects. And so eventually we hope to take this information to Nicaragua in order to disseminate it so that people can make their own conclusions and eventually develop their own projects.
Great. So as Rafael said, we focused on 3 distinct projects. I personally focused on sugar plantations, the World Bank, and chronic kidney disease, which for me was a very interesting study on development as it pertains to Nicaragua, but also a very sobering reminder of some of the negative consequences that can come from development projects that are supposed to be for good. So just a quick description of Chichigalpa, which isn't an area that we've studied too much in class, mainly because it's a small area. It's not too far from Leon on the northeast side, and it holds a population of about 33,000 people. And so for the most part, it's very much an agricultural town. There's a huge corporation called Ingenio San Antonio, which is the largest sugar plantation in Nicaragua. It produces 44% of Nicaraguan sugar, and for the most part, a majority of the townsfolk in Chichigalpa, a majority being men, do work on this plantation and provide the sugar output. Ingenio San Antonio is owned by Carlos Pelas, also Nicaragua's first billionaire, who is the latest line in a long-standing family that has influenced Nicaraguan sugar and also rum creation. They have a great relationship with the Sandinistas, which wasn't always the case, because after the Sandinista revolt in 1979, the Pelas Group actually lost a lot of its real estate as the Sandinistas tried to nationalize a number of different industries. During the Chamorro presidency, Pelas actually brought back the sugar mills and a new bank that he created that he ended up selling to General Electric for $1.7 billion. And when Ortega was reelected, he vowed not to confiscate the property of big business as a part of his new kind of economic plan. And so since then, Carlos and Daniel Ortega have had a strong relationship. The World Bank has also been very interested in the Nicaraguan sugar industry, and they've seen it as a great way in which they can fund Nicaragua to increase their development, especially as it pertains to international trade and economy. And so several loans have been provided to the Pelas Group and Ingenio San Antonio to increase their aggregate output. One that comes to mind is in 2006, the International Finance Committee, which is the financial arm of the World Bank, provided $55 million in loans to help fund Ingenio's increased development in size, and so they were able to hire more workers. And also in 2013, the World Bank actually approved a $15 million loan to Matil Lamar, which is another plantation that produced a large amount of sugar, and in doing so, they were able to get 1,300 new rural jobs. And so in total, the World Bank has issued more than $100 million in loans to the Nicaraguan sugar industry, which shows their commitment to really developing Nicaraguan sugar. So these sound like great things, right? So ultimately, why am I saying this? It looks like the sugar industry is receiving all the support that it needs. More people are able to go to work and provide for their families, and Nicaragua is able to develop faster given these foreign investments in business. The reason why we care is because of non-traditional chronic kidney disease, which really, to put it as best as I can, a scientific anomaly. Scientists haven't been able to figure out what the symptoms of the disease has, really what the symptoms are, what the causes of the disease are, and also how to treat it. And so there is a stark difference between chronic kidney disease and this non-traditional case that you see in Nicaragua, whereas chronic kidney disease is a more degenerative process that happens to older age men and women, affects a certain part of the kidney, and the risk factors are usually associated with obesity, hypertension, diabetes. Chronic kidney disease is based on heavy labor, hot temperatures, and is found mainly in industrial agricultural workers, for the most part working age males, in Central America, but not only Central America, but Sri Lanka, and India, so Southern Asia as well. And it's an epidemic. While researchers scramble to find the sole cause, the disease continues to deplete the male population in Chichigalpa. As a result, the area is nicknamed the Island of Widows. Why? Because over the past 10 years, 46% of male deaths in Chichigalpa were attributed to this non-traditional form of chronic kidney disease. From 2002 to 2012, that 10-year span, we saw that 75% of male deaths between the ages of 35 and 55 was caused by this disease. And if the statistics don't tell you, there was a campaign recently established to literally show the pictures of those lost, and these ultimately are fathers, husbands, sons, amongst other men that really add to the community. And the last presentation I just said that 40% of that went, like the female households are singly ran by women in Chichigalpa. The statistics are much higher because of this really detrimental disease. And so La Allah Foundation has done some great work in trying to increase awareness about the disease, fund protests, and also move forward in trying to find a way in which we can hold these businesses accountable for a lot of things that are going on. And so amongst the things that they did was a field study in which they went to Ingenio and looked at if they were meeting regular standards, and they found that they weren't. A number of characteristics in the plant were that the hours worked during the harvest were reported between 2 and 15 hours, but for the most part, most worked approximately 8 hours per day, which actually isn't legal given the harsh working conditions that they were doing. The working arrangements were informal. There were unreasonable salary cuts because of this informal pay, in which workers didn't know how regularly they would get paid, if they had a contract or not, and so they did not know when they were getting paid. There were hazardous working conditions, and a failure to provide equipment obviously led to many injuries. Of course, an exposure to extreme heat, and although they were exposed to these high temperatures, many workers referenced that they didn't drink the daily recommended amount of water per hour as they were working, which obviously leads to some health problems after a while. And so again, there were no access to Ingenio medical facilities for a number of these workers, or any medical benefits of any kind, even though this disease has been long-standing for a number of years, and overall just a hostile work environment. And so, as you can expect, this resulted in a lot of protests around the same time in which the World Bank were looking to fund Ingenio and really expand their businesses. At the same time, there were a number of protests going on. This is actually a poster drawn by Aubrey Rumper, which is an artist who's done a lot of work in Nicaragua, and literally draws basically banners like these so that people can use them for protest. She's taken a number of pictures with them, has put them on Ingenio farms, and really has tried to impact the movement in that manner. And so ultimately, the role is, although there has been protests, there really hasn't been much done in terms of really finding a cure for this disease, and really making sure that businesses are held accountable for their social responsibility to these communities. The only thing that the World Bank has done, which I did not put in the slide, is that they have funded $1 million to Boston University, in which they have conducted some field studies in their own. And in those field studies, really the only thing that they found out was that this disease isn't proliferated because of the use of pesticides, which doesn't really do much to help the cause, but it's a very stark contrast when they're giving $100 million to proliferate the sugar industry, with only $1 million to figure out the causes of a disease that's causing the deaths of thousands in this small rural community.
So I did some research into a different project. So it's called the Education for Success Project. and it's funded by USAID, and it's being undertaken currently in the Región Autónoma del Atlántico Sur, otherwise known as the RAS region in Nicaragua. So that's why it interested me, simply because it's around the area of where we will be going. So to begin, just a little summary. The main goal of the USAID supported Education for Success project is to develop and implement an integrated program for at-risk children and youth in targeted municipalities in the RAS region. And this would provide opportunities for formal and non-formal education, life skills, and workforce competencies. So this program has been implemented by Fundación para la Autonomía y Desarrollo de la Costa Atlántica del Sur, long name, otherwise known as, well, I would call it FATCANI. So the Education for Success program was launched in 2010 as a 7-year, $6.7 million effort implemented in various municipalities within the RAS region. And in September 2013, USAID and Nicaragua requested that a midterm evaluation of this project be conducted. So the purpose of the study was to examine the extent to which the program has contributed to advancing its goals. So all the information that I get is from this very large study. So the results of the midterm evaluation demonstrate that EFS has been successful in generating youth development opportunities within this region. So in order to elaborate a little bit more on the findings, I begin with talking about the increased skills of the at-risk youth. So those students that had received skills training were generally enthusiastic about what they had learned and indicated that they were now much better prepared in terms of some of the major themes stressed during the workshops, namely self-esteem, assertive communication, and decision-making skills. And the youth indicated that one of the major benefits of vocational training and life skills seminars they received was that they gained greater self-confidence and a wider vision of what was possible. So these workshops were, in their eyes, very beneficial because they were learning valuable skills that they hadn't received before. Nonetheless, there are some critiques. And although some employment opportunities are available in Bluefields, opportunities are very limited in other more remote municipalities. And as a result, only a handful of the graduates of the vocational courses actually found jobs. So a big critique was like, okay, you're teaching us all these skills, but there are no more jobs. At the end of the day, I just have to go home, feed my family, provide, for my household, and this doesn't help me at all. And then another critique was that although these courses were conducted according to national standards for education, for duration, graduates indicated that further training would be necessary in order for these courses to make a real difference in their lives. So, these courses were just like a basic introduction to some skills, whereas they thought they needed a more in-depth course and training. Another very important finding is the improved family and community engagement in support of the Education for Success program. So this is very important of family and community engagement, simply because in order for the youth to succeed, they need buy-in from the community, they need buy-in from their parents and other neighbors and family members. So we can see this was going underway when parents said that they had participated in CHADS or Chadlas, sponsored by the EFS program, on how to be better parents, how to treat children, and on gender-related topics. And then parents also addressed that positive behavioral changes that they and the children had experienced as a result of their own participation in parenting groups, as well as their children's participation in life skills training, tutoring, or counseling sessions. So we can see this family buy-in. We can see that the parents were making an effort to learn how to become better parents, to learn how to help their children, and the children themselves are going to tutoring sessions, counseling. So there was a lot more being done in order to help these at-risk youth. And then in the community engagement section of this, the EFS has established relationships with 17 individuals and organizations to support the provision of services to beneficiaries of the program, including youth houses, art, music, sports, education, research, and counseling. So, in addition to these programs and this emotional support, they're receiving actual services. They're actually receiving a space where they can go study, or technology and things of that nature. They're able to participate in extracurricular activities. And then, but as with the other finding, there's a critique to this as a challenge. So kayak committees, community youth at-risk advisory committees, were established in order to assist at-risk youth, but this has not worked out exactly as planned. The members of this committee demonstrated the will to participate in order to assist at-risk youth, but they commented that they lacked the appropriate guidance and information to deal with what they saw as major problems of risk among youth. So these committees were established to help the youth, but they weren't exactly working as planned. And then the last finding is that FADCANIC's organizational, technical, and management system improved. So this is very important because this organization is the managerial organization. So it will control this program once USAID leaves, once all that funding leaves, they will take over and they will be the only ones responsible for ensuring the success, the future success of this program. So the implementation process of this program has been a learning by doing process that's combined institutional strengthening with project implementation. So kind of like a learn as you go process. You know, they're learning a lot from this program, which is good in the future because then they will be able to spearhead their own programs without the help of USAID and related sources. So FADCANIC receives technical assistance and institutional support from the American Institute for Research, and this, combined with the organization's own efforts, help to improve its organizational development, especially in human resource and financial management. So once again, they're just learning very important skills that they will need in the future to continue to carry out this program and similar programs. And they also indicated intent to hire consultants for a variety of activities and to carry out institutional and individual staff training programs. But nonetheless, you know, there are always challenges. So in this case, it's sustainability. You know, the problem is how will this program be sustained once USAID leaves, once that funding leaves. And right now they rely very heavily on volunteers. So there's a problem with volunteers in that turnover among the volunteer corps is high. The time that volunteers can devote to activities is limited, and volunteers need constant attention. And there's few mechanisms in place allowing for the transfer of knowledge of skills from one volunteer to another. You know, so this high dependency on volunteers is a problem that they're striving to fix by hiring permanent staff and by also including better training. So to end, I'm just going to include a success story of this program, put a face to the story. So Macarena, shown in this picture right here, she's a 17-year-old struggling youth and the second of 4 children of an unemployed couple living in the Ras region in Nicaragua. And at age 15, finishing 6th grade and facing reading and integration difficulties, her mother was thinking of taking her out of school and making her find a job to support the family, which is a very realistic story for many youth in Nicaragua. But fortunately, the EFS program provided her with a scholarship, and this scholarship provides her with books, uniform, shoes, and other materials needed for school, as well as supporting her participation in life skills training and sports activities. You know, so for us, you know, like that's very menial. Books, uniform, you know, that's things that we've always been given. But for her, that's the difference between going to school or having to drop out and find a job to help her family. And then also due to advocacy on part of the kayak committees, teachers and local education authorities, her mother decided that keeping her in school will contribute to her individual and family success more than if she were to drop out. So in total, you know, this project has been very beneficial to the community, not only providing resources, providing counseling, and providing guidance for not only the youth but their families.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Nicaragua Development Cooperation Strategy. And so this is based off a report that was issued by the USAID that would address different plans and different goals they had from the fiscal year 2013 to the fiscal year 2017. And from those, they include the 2 main concepts that this report focuses on is increasing democratic engagement from the population in Nicaragua, as well as increasing education. And you're going to see how these 2 are correlated. So their objective for this project was to increase citizens' ability to engage in democratic governance and allow civil society and media to promote and participate in policy dialogue. So there's, like, I highlighted 2 important parts of this. The USAID really focuses on media and how that needs to be increased in Nicaragua, because currently, I'm going to go a little bit into more details about this later. Daniel Ortega owns about half of the media in Nicaragua, and people believe that that may have had a big effect on how he was reelected in 2006, because he won by a 63% vote, which is a very high increase from what he had originally won beforehand. And so the pros of the USAID program is that it's going to address issues of local culture. So it takes into consideration the machismoism culture of Nicaragua. It considers gender dynamics. So women in Nicaragua aren't excluded because currently population is 70% is under 30 years old, and over 50% of that is women. So it bridges a gap of education and claims to limit bias in media by creating more media that would include a more moderate approach as opposed to like very left-wing or very right-wing in the government. But a con of this program and a criticism is that the U.S. may be funding democratic institutions, which they might be having some sort of say in what type of government is going to be implemented later on, since they're focusing on building future leaders. So if you look at this graph right here, you see that on the right side, it talks about education, and so they're promoting, as Rafael mentioned, education in high-risk children and youth on the southern and Caribbean coast. And by doing that, that's going to increase citizens' ability to get engaged in democratic governance because they're going to be able to understand it better. And once people are educated, a goal of one of the programs, which I'm going to get into, is to identify local emerging leaders and to actually provide them with more hands-on mentorship. Okay, so that program is actually called the Democratic Leadership Development Program. So they're partnered with a nonprofit organization that is nonpartisan as well. It's called the National Democratic Institute for International Affairs. And so this project actually began in 2010 in Nicaragua and is still going on now. As of 2010, 1,850 students have been educated, and about 400 of those have been elected into actual local authority leadership positions in their local government, whatever that may look like. So the budget of this program is actually about $12 million, which is actually like a third of what the budget is for USAID's development projects in agriculture. So that's kind of interesting to see that they're focusing so much on agriculture as opposed to raising the next generation of leaders in Nicaragua. So a little bit more about the NID is that it facilitates discussions on women's leadership, and this is actually a very positive thing, as I mentioned before. And it also works with faith-based organizations to promote civil engagement. The reason this is very important is because as of 2005, about 80% of the population was Christian, and from that, it breaks down to more like 58% were Roman Catholic, 21.6% were actually evangelical. So one of these like faith-based organizations, for example, is called Compassion, and they work with local residents and just help them engage in political issues by just facilitating discussions and through just meals and such. And the reason this is very important is because religion has also been a very important form of political involvement in Nicaragua historically. And so some of the NID findings are that unbiased results have been produced. So people have been concerned about the U.S. implementing their own beliefs on the next generation of Nicaraguans. But there are stories of people that are Sandinistas that have gone through the program and are still leaders today. So they're not trying to in any way phase out Nicaraguans, which is probably the good thing. Well, they're not trying to phase out Nicaraguans' beliefs on Sandinista government. They're just trying to help improve and facilitate discussion. That way more people can be involved and more opinions are expressed. So Sylvia Gutierrez is actually a member of the Sandinista Renovation Movement Party. So she's not the old type of Sandinista, but she's still Sandinista. She participated in the program, and she is now an elected leader in her region. I don't remember what it was called, but she's also serving as a mentor to some of the younger students, which is really good because the program, after the students go through it, follows up with them. It has alumni networks that help facilitate just career growth and develop different sorts of paths they can take to work their way up in the government. Okay. So I've already gone through this in the previous slide. So the need for the USAID involvement in media and government can be faced with the fact that Daniel Ortega in 2011 had 63% of majority votes. He currently controls about half of all Nicaraguan TV stations, and he currently has owned 2 different websites for news. That is now one of the main forms a lot of Nicaraguans get their news, at least in the regions where internet is available. So journalism is really lacking an approach that would make it validated, because a lot of the times, we even see this in the United States, that they're owned by private companies, and in this case by one private stakeholder who is actually a politician, and that creates bias and may skew results and different views people have about him. So looking ahead, a way we hope to implement all these different views we've talked about in our just in our project is that by creating a survey, we can go to Nicaragua or, I don't know, like even online, talk to Huracan students and based off different demographics and genders and ask about political affiliations and just try to put a voice with the numbers of all these different statistics we're hearing, because a lot of the times we tend to ignore the fact that people in Nicaragua are probably interested in different careers than what we are, I don't know, like actually the USAID might be promoting. So this is just like tie it all back together and just talking about like looking forward ahead. So we want to like find out what type of regions these people are living in, what type of political affiliations they may have, what type of projects they see may be lacking, and what sort of views they have on USAID. I'm pretty sure not everyone's going to be super informed on all the different projects USAID is conducting, so this is just a way to help facilitate conversation on that and help bring visibility to people in Nicaragua that otherwise may not have a voice, particularly in the rural areas. In 1990, the amount of people in rural areas that were actually able to vote was a lot higher, or actually participated in voting was a lot higher because they were affected a lot by the Contra War. So in the 1990s, you saw like about an 86% vote turnout, and now it's been fluctuating between like 70 to 75%. So we want to help bridge that gap, and through a survey, we can actually find out why people aren't voting, and hopefully help use that information to create different sort of handouts and just recommendations for people and reminders that can be implemented through Bridges to Community, and say like, remind people like, hey, like you have the right to vote, you can go out and vote, and this is when it's going on.
Yeah. Okay. Once again, you've raised lots of interesting issues, but I think we have to move on.
Yes. Yeah,
But
sure.
you've been noticing connections too. I mean, you're talking about what was happening with the sugar plantations. I was thinking